The Cold War had not yet begun, but in the shadows of World War II, a battle was raging unseen, but no less deadly. This was the war fought with secrets, with spies, hidden messages, and treacherous alliances. It was a war fought in dark alleys in the backs of trains and cryptic letters passed from hand to hand. The Soviet Union, a giant at the heart of this invisible conflict, was creating a network so vast, so secret, that even the most sophisticated intelligence agencies couldn't have imagined its scale. The name of the game was espionage, and no one played it better than the Soviets. The world is on the brink of collapse. The Axis powers are growing bolder. Nazi Germany is taking hold of Europe, and the Allies are scrambling to form a united front. But in the heart of the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin has his own plans. While the West is preoccupied with the rise of fascism, Stalin is building a silent, deadly army of spies. The NKVD, the Soviet secret police, had already infiltrated key positions in Europe and the United States. They planted operatives in every major city from Berlin to London, from New York to Paris. These agents were not just gathering information, they were manipulating events, feeding misinformation, sowing discord in the ranks of the Allies. The Soviet intelligence services were working in the shadows behind the scenes as the war began to shift the balance of power. One of the most crucial pieces of this network was the Soviet Military Intelligence Unit, known as the GRU. It was their job to gather military secrets, intercept enemy communications, and assess strategic weaknesses. But in a world filled with the chaos of war, the GRU was not only collecting intelligence, they were infiltrating the minds of the enemy. In Britain, the Soviets had their eyes on a crucial target: the British establishment. The British were fiercely protective of their own intelligence agencies, MI5 and MI6. But the Soviets knew the truth: even the most sophisticated spy network can be undermined by a single leak, a single defector. And they found one. In the heart of London, a seemingly unremarkable man named Kim Philby was quietly rising through the ranks of British intelligence. An accomplished officer, charming, well-connected, and well-respected, Philby had a secret. He was a Soviet agent recruited by the KGB long before he began his career in MI6. As a key member of the Cambridge Five, a group of Soviet spies, Philby fed vital information to the Soviets, betraying the very nation that had trusted him. In his time, Philby provided the Soviets with highly classified reports on British operations in the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and Europe. He provided the names of British double agents, sabotaged military operations, and misled his superiors about the true nature of Soviet intentions. The Soviets, in turn, protected him, grooming him to move further into British intelligence. Philby's actions were a dagger to the heart of British operations. The betrayal was so deep, so hidden, that for years the British government never suspected their most trusted officers had been working for the enemy. The war was fought not just on the battlefield, but inside the walls of intelligence offices, where treachery was a constant threat. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the Soviet spy network was growing in the United States. American officials had been naive, trusting the Soviets in the early years of the war, believing that Stalin's interest in defeating Hitler would overshadow any other ambitions. But the Soviets were already infiltrating the highest levels of the U.S. government. The Venona Project. A secret operation by the U.S. government intercepted Soviet communications from agents planted in American military and diplomatic circles. The Venona Project was one of the greatest secrets of the Cold War, revealing hundreds of Soviet spies who had worked within the U.S. government during the 1940s and beyond. Among them was Julius Rosenberg, a seemingly average American engineer, who along with his wife Ethel provided the Soviet Union with classified nuclear secrets, including information about the atomic bomb. Their espionage work would directly contribute to the Soviet Union's ability to develop its own atomic weapons. While the United States celebrated its victory in the war behind closed doors, the Soviets were celebrating a different victory: the successful infiltration of the American military-industrial complex. But the Soviets weren't just gathering information. They were also creating misinformation networks, infiltrating enemy lines through deception. Using agents like Richard Sorge, a Soviet spy who worked in the German embassy in Tokyo, the Soviets were able to manipulate Japanese strategy and gain critical knowledge about Hitler's plans. Sorge's greatest achievement was his ability to warn the Soviet Union about Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union Operation Barbarossa. He provided the Soviets with precise details of the Nazi plans, allowing Stalin to move forces and prepare for the oncoming attack. Without Sorge's information, the Soviets might have been caught completely off guard. Instead, they managed to mount a defense that would eventually halt the Nazi advance at Stalingrad. As the war continued, the Soviets expanded their espionage network into Eastern Europe, using their control of the region to create a vast network of spies, informants, and collaborators. They trained agents to infiltrate the German Wehrmacht, the Polish underground, and even American soil. By the end of the war, the Soviet Union had established a web of spies that stretched from Berlin to New York, from Paris to Tokyo. The most successful spy networks are not the ones that gather the most information, but those that use information to manipulate, to deceive, and to influence the course of history. In this invisible war, the Soviet Union's spies were the unseen hands that guided the outcome of World War II and ultimately shaped the geopolitical landscape of the Cold War. The war ended, but the shadow networks did not. In the aftermath of World War II, intelligence operations only grew more complex. While the world celebrated victory, the Soviets continued to work in the shadows, planting their spies, manipulating their enemies, and ensuring that the world would never return to the way it once was. And so the espionage war continued, a war fought by unseen hands, guided by hidden motives, where truth was elusive and betrayal was constant. Today we still look back at these secret wars where the lines between friend and foe were often blurred. We remember the heroes of Bletchley Park, the spies like Philby and Sorge, and the hidden networks that shaped the course of history. In their actions, they not only altered the course of World War II, but also set the stage for a new kind of warfare, one fought in the shadows, in encrypted messages, and in the minds of the few who knew how to manipulate the unseen.